Good morning and good afternoon or good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever and whenever you find yourselves being, colleagues, speakers, and participants. I'd like to warmly welcome you all to this breakout session of the International Conference on Forest Education, and we're highlighting the role of communication. The title of the session is called 10 Reasons Why You Should Take a Job in Forestry, changing the public's perception of the forest through strategic communication. It's a great pleasure to be able to emphasize the importance of communicating about forests and forestry and the important role that people, professionals play in it. My name is Kai Lintunen. I'm the head of international communication at the Finnish Forest Association, and I'm also the leader of the UNEC FAO Forest Communicators Network. I'll be your moderator today. The purpose of today's session is to explore why many people still have an outdated idea of what it means to work in forestry and what can be done to attract the best and brightest to consider forestry as a viable career choice. And to do so, we will discuss the perceived barriers to forestry careers, hear from inspiring men and women employed in the sector, and brainstorm innovative and achievable strategic communication approaches that can help capture and outline the realities and societal importance of the forestry career. So we want to engage and interact with you, the audience. So let us kick off. Let's get your juices flowing. We will warm up and start by opening the floor with a short interactive activity with Slido and forming a word cloud by way of posing a question to you. And the question is if you were to convince a young person to take up a job in forestry with a word, a single word, what would that word be? I'll give you a couple of minutes to come up with your answer. You can find the link to Slido in the chat or scan the QR code on the screen to open the window where you can input your answer. And once the window is open, you can type your answer in the enter a word field and click send. So let's get cracking. And may I just mention that all your valuable contributions will be reflected in the report later. It's looking very good now. Here we have what might be expected with working with nature and sort of a more traditional views of the profession, but then we have adventure and adrenaline and fight, and it's just a wonderful eclectic mix of reasons for working in forest. It looks very good, very good. Um, yes, we are a bit on a tight schedule today, partly because of the labyrinth of the breakout sessions, but also that we have many exciting speakers lined up for you today. And I think these will be noted in the reporting phase later, but we move little by little to the speakers. And with that, uh, our first speaker, Miss Kerry Davies. Kerry is a learning and development manager of Forest Mondi, South Africa, and she has spent the majority of her working career, over 25 years, in the forest industry, working with skills development. She was instrumental in developing forestry qualifications at the lower levels and more recently the vocational qualifications in the forest industry in South Africa. Today, she will share strategies to attract the best and brightest to work in the forest related sector and how to keep them. Over to you, Kerry.
Thank you, Kai. Good day, everybody. A warm welcome from South Africa. I'm going to present a case study of the work that I'm busy with for our Mondi group in South Africa in the forest sector specifically. So next slide, please. So just at a quick glance, what is Mondi about? Mondi is a multinational. We're in 38 countries, North America, Africa, Europe, Asia. We largely a paper, pulp, and packaging company. And sustainability is really all about what Mondi is. It's at the heart of our strategy. So if you're wanting to see more about our action plan 2030, you can go onto our website and you can go and look at that for yourselves. But just a bit about myself. So I look after all the learning and development for all our employees in forest sector and in Mondi that work for Mondi, plus contractor employees, which is over 3,000, and to make sure that they are competent and that we reduce the risk and also improve the productivity of their work in field. And then also I look after all the student feedstock that comes into our business and all the work-based experienced students so that they can be employable. So they finish their qualifications and then they don't have enough experience to get a job. So we also provide opportunity for them to get some experience in the workplace. Next slide, please. So, thank you. Okay, so attracting the best and the brightest in Mondi is really about our core. And it's about, if you look at the bottom of the page, you'll see we want to be the employer of choice, but to make sure that we're employing the right people. So all these 10 aspects that I have put on the slide is all about doing that very thing. So the very first thing that one's got to take into consideration is that forestry in South Africa is scarce and critical. So because of that, it makes it an employable opportunity for young learners. We also have some very good quality institutions that offer forestry at tertiary level. And then in Mondi itself, there's a whole lot of things that we do to develop our foresters. So the first one I put there is diverse career paths. So people can choose once they've got a forestry qualification, they come into the business and we develop them in 2 lines. They can swap between the 2. So one is more line management, going into general management of forestry. And the second one's all about becoming a specialist or support in the business. We have very structured development pipelines. And along with that, our succession planning is in place to ensure that our employment equity, because it's a big issue in South Africa, to make sure we level the playing fields for everybody across the board. And also that it's sustainable, very important. But just going back to point number 6, mechanization and high-tech tools is at the very core. You'll see at the top right-hand side of the page, it's got precision forestry. We've launched into that. So it's all about modernization, laptops, tablets, smartphones, making it really hip or cool, as someone said, for people to join this industry. And also lots of digitization and AI. I've spoken about sustainability already. Sustainability is also about uplifting our communities around our forests. And so it's rural areas and alleviation of poverty, huge area which Mondi is involved in for our sustainability, or green economies. It all comes into that mix. We also have very structured people development. We have a forester learning center that all our foresters go through, and that's to ensure that all our foresters are calibrated with the same knowledge. And also we offer further studies, masters, PhDs, so that people can actually climb the academic ladder as well. At the very core of us it's about continuous improvement. All of us have received training on that, and it's about innovation and mobility to make things better continuously all the time. And then lastly, I just had to put in number 10 about our mentorship and our coaching, to remain competitive in an environment where you've got scarce and critical skills, is to make sure that you retain your people, but also develop them at the same time so they become part of our family and in Mondi. So in a nutshell, that's what it's all about. So that's how we attract the best and the brightest and keep them in Mondi.
Thank you very much, Kerry. That
Pleasure.
looks like a very compelling and lucrative package, and one can tell that you're going forward in very kind of addressing the current climate and going sustainability first. I would like to alert the speakers that I will also ask you to think about 2-3 reasons that you'd like to share with the audience on why a person should be seeking employment in forestry, and I'll just start with you, Kerry.
So I think 2 things for me are this whole high-tech mechanization and tools is just an amazing thing that's happening. It's, you know, we in this 4th industrial revolution, and kids are attracted by that. So young learners or youth coming into the organization, you know, we are up against engineering kids that are saying, oh, I want to go into medicine or engineering because of the science and technology component there of their school subjects. But it's to attract them into forestry. And then on the second side, it's all about our green economies, looking after the sustainability, alleviating poverty, working with rural communities. I think that's also a big catch net in the forest industry in South Africa, certainly.
Thanks, Kerry. That sounds very good. We will move on now, and next up we have Dr. Magda Budager Karat, who is a professor at the Faculty of Science, St. Joseph University of Beirut, Lebanon. She's a geneticist with special interest in endemic species conservation, and her expertise is at the heart of ecosystem restoration, an approach that she implemented through the NGO Juju Lubnan she co-founded in 2008. And today, Dr. Madek will share with us the importance of research, and mainly applied research in forestry, and the way to trigger students to such fields. Over to you, Dr. Magda.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you, everybody. So yeah, I will. It's difficult to speak after Kerry because she already talked about the points I wanted to tackle in my presentation, but still I will emphasize on some examples. Please, for the person who will be putting the slides, if you can go on. Okay, next one, please. So as geneticist and as NGO founder dealing with forest ecological restoration, I see the forest as a very complex ecosystem, as you may know, and to conserve them, we should explore them first in order to protect and valorize them. So science and research have their say and help through the ages to decipher this complexity and help define good management practices. But today, in fact, forests can able to take care of themselves. But today we are more than 7 billion to share the planet with forests and other ecosystems. So we need to work to alleviate this pressure. And to take care of forests, we need people to do it. We need manager, forester, and scientists. And our problem is to engage people of quality in this domain. So nowadays, forests are experiencing rapid shift in structure, function, and the human valuation. And at the same time, technology seems at the top, is well advanced, and making extensive and hard labor work easier using this technology. So in ecological restoration, for example, I can see a forest as a Lego elements, trees, shrubs, flowers, birds, mammal, insect. And to create a forest, we can bring all these pieces together, the species one by one. But we know that more than the species, the interaction between these pieces are very important. And this is where our knowledge and our work should be. So to understand this interaction and forest dynamics, we have to monitor them. And to monitor them, we can employ today the term smart forestry. As smartphones, everything around us is smart today. And by using this terminology, this attracts the young people and we are talking their language. So this accurate and reliable forestry data can be obtained by means of continuous monitoring of forests using advanced technology. So technology is seen in the method used as an instrument. Forest monitoring relies primarily on remote sensing, location technology to capture a variety of data. And this variety of data can rely on what we call IoT or Internet of Things, a revolutionary technology that aims to interconnect everyday objects equipped with identity sensors, etc. And this amount of data will be treated like forestry big data to analyze all of this. So by using this term and by showing to the young people we are trying to enroll in the field of forestry and in this higher education field, is to use this kind of term and show them this is where you can apply these things and still be close to nature. Can you please, I forgot to tell you to advance the slides. Go on, please, yes. Okay, so here we show the methods and the instruments. Next one, please. So for example, we have this Life Plan project, which is an international project led by University of Helsinki. Next, please. And we are using, for example, this kind of different approach to study biodiversity in forest, like a cyclone sampler to collect the spore of fungi, fern, etc. Then malaise trap for insects, soil microorganism, and all of this will go through the DNA technology. So every living organism have its own DNA signature. And individuals of the same species have common sequence that can be used, and we call them the DNA barcode or species signature. So we construct reference library, and then we can apply meta-barcoding. Can you apply, show the next one, please? Okay, next one. Voila, for example, here we can apply this in forestry to decipher the food web in the forest. Who is eating what already, who is present. For example, we are collecting here scats, and from these scats we can take all the DNA in it. So we will have the DNA of the guy who did the poop of the animal and what he ate. And then we construct the food web of the forest. And this will help us to see what is in case of infestation, for example, or in case of where some species are taking over on others. So this kind of technology, if we show them to the young people when we go to school to promote work on this domain, the forest is a place where all of these technologies can be applied. And by using these terms and by showing them application of these technologies, they can easily relate to one of them and try to get involved. And once here, we should have hands-on activities, not just theoretical courses, and go very early during the curriculum to the forest and have work there. So this is something we are using and we try to promote in order to keep our good students. Voila. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Magda. That was very, very impressive. And we can tell that you have the research and academia and forest industry have similar aspirations on getting the best and the brightest and to keep them. Just as a reminder that we have a longer bios on the speakers in the chat. So we'll just introduce them in a short manner, and for any details you can find more in the chat. I would now like to ask you, Dr. Magda, as well, for your two reasons on why one should and could choose a career in forestry.
Yes, why we do? What I said is that this is where we can have we can work and keep quality of work and quality of life. So we are paid for this. While I feel like it's something that everybody should do it without being paid. But by working in forestry domain, we are paid to do something that everyone is supposed to do, and we can benefit from being outside, from being useful for the society and for the planet Earth.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Magda. We will turn to our next speaker, Dr. Tatenda Mapeto, who is a forestry academic in the Natural Resources Science and Management cluster at the Nelson Mandela University in South Africa. Her expertise is in forest inventory, planning and forest resource management, especially on the socio-economic and environmental aspects of sustainable forest management. And today she will talk about the importance of greater representation of women in forestry and how it can contribute to attracting young women into the sector. Over to you, Dr. Tenda. Do we have?
I saw her earlier, but now she doesn't seem to be online. Maybe we have to move on.
Yes. Okay, we will see if she finds her way back to the session then at some point, and we will move on to the next speaker, who is Apsana Kafle. And she is an early career forestry graduate from Tribhuvan University in Nepal, who is now studying a master's degree in forest biology and management at the University of Alberta in Canada. She has established herself as a youth leader through advocating youth engagements and gender integration in forestry sector. She aspires to establish herself as a forest communicator, which is promising. She will share with us what attracted her to enter forestry and why it's important for today's generation to be involved. Over to you, Apsana.
Thank you, Kai. Thank you for your introduction. So talking about my personal experience and what had inspired me to study forestry back, I think it's like 5 or 6 years from now. So I would recall that during my high school, I was a very, studious nerd kind of a student who was like morely indoor, and then did not really come out of the comfort zone. But I was like thinking and eager to switch on to a career where I could really explore and then also really get to involve something that included my passion, which was somewhat towards the nature conservation. So in 2015, as I was on the break, I got to do a volunteer work. So if you remember, there was a very big earthquake in Nepal back in 2015.
Yes.
So I somehow got the chance to go to some remote areas and distribute some relief funds. So as I was born in the urban area, in the city area, I had really no clue about how the forest in the outskirts was and how the communities were associated. So by the time I reached the spot where the earthquake had hit very badly, I could see that people were already, like building resilience, and they were like so much dependent on the forest. I mean, before we reached there, I could see that forest was a source for livelihood. It was also the source of food and firewood for the people. So somehow, as I got to interact over there with some other volunteers, that was when I really came across the term forestry, because before that, I really had no clue that there was a career in forestry. So as soon as I came back, I just decided that would be something that I would choose. And also, it not only included my passion, but also was something that isn't still mainstreamed in my country. That's why I would say I had taken of forestry initially, and until now, I don't have any regrets, and I'm also continuing my career pursuing master's degree in forestry from Canada.
Outstanding. I'm happy to hear you still have no regrets, and hope it keeps that way, because we're riding the wave in this sector. So, can I ask your 2, 3 reasons for working in forestry?
Yes, sure. So like I mentioned, the first and foremost reason for me would always be, and that I would definitely encourage others, is through forestry, you can directly work with and for nature, because we are now in this, time of the world where we have already realized that how much nature conservation is important, not just for this generation, but also for coming generations. And the second thing, that as I'm pursuing my career and moving forward in forestry, I would say that through forestry, one can really work to, make a high impact. For example, through forestry, while I'm working in forestry, or while anybody's working in forestry, we can really influence policy and development planning of a country, and also for the region and the world. We can also contribute, like for restoration initiatives, and something that really makes a huge impact on the generations to come. So that would definitely be my second reason for somebody to influence a career in forestry.
That's very inspiring. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I like the high impact. That shows that we're dynamic, and we're looking forward. Uh, have we been able to retrieve Tatenda?
Not yet, sorry.
Okay, she will hopefully make her way back to us at some point. But then I suggest that we move on to our next speaker, who is John Colmy. John has extensive experience as an award-winning journalist, communication expert at both C4 and the managing director of the Global Landscapes Forum, GLF. Building on his 30-year-long experience in Africa, Southeast and Southeast Asia, he will share his perspective on the role and impact of communication to change perceptions, and to share successful examples from his experience at both C4 and GLF. Over to you, John.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go through this presentation in about 3 minutes. I'm going to go through quickly. There's some very, very exciting things happening. We are creating a global community for change right now. And we're doing it primarily through communication and different kinds of communication. So I'm going to move fast. GLF came out of Forest Day. And this is the one you've got to look at. Everywhere you are, you've got to look at these numbers. When we first started at C4, when I was first started in 2009 in communication, we had 20% of our work was cited, and we had 1 billion people on Earth. 1 people online, sorry. At the end of 10 years, 80% of our work was cited. We have 2,000 media hits a year, almost larger than the whole CGIAR. But look at that number, and 75% of the world's going to be online by 2022, 2023, and by 2030, 90%. We look at, this was April, we look at this data on a regular basis wherever we go, and look at that. We can take this down to countries. But these are regions. You just got to constantly check these numbers, because that's how we're creating the new community. The new community is digital. Next. And this is what we managed to do. 7,000, 60,000 youth from 185 countries are regularly engaged. We have a community now of 250,000 people that regularly engage with GLF. It started with conferences, and now it's getting bigger. It started by C4, World Bank, and UNEP. FAO has been a part all along. And we now have 31 charter members. We connect all of those charter members, their communication platforms, when we go to communicate. That's how we get these big numbers, reaching over 1 billion people. Go ahead. So those are our charter members. You see a lot of forestry organizations there, from all bringing in different subjects and different topics. Go ahead. And this is the forefront of communication for me. In my whole life, I worked at Time. I worked at C4 for 10 years. I've been checking data on it every 2 weeks for 10 years now. And no one ever thinks that this was first talked about by Eleanor Olson, the great Nobel Prize winner in late. And that's what we're creating, living knowledge, free knowledge, that people around the world can join and come to give information like the great information we just got from Apsana and the other speakers, that we can throw in the information and then you can share it and you can communicate, and you can communicate local, very, very local. Go ahead. Now, this is after COVID. So this was our biodiversity conference. It's pretty much a global conference, but look at those numbers. Nothing like that in an in-person conference. 4,800 organizations from around the world. And another one everyone's talking about, we're talking about gender. One of GLF, look at the gender mix of those 5,000 people, almost 50-50, and more women than men. And every single conference we've had for 7 years is half women, half men speakers, always. And that's one of the ways we bring women into our field of forestry and other fields in development. But one thing I realized with this was COVID isolated people in the North, in Europe. We couldn't go out and see friends. But for people that couldn't afford to go to Cancun or to Glasgow or to whoever, they can come in and join the conversation, have their voices heard today through digital. And that's what we're doing. And that's our community. Go ahead. And you say, okay, well, that's global. It doesn't matter. But what about Africa? We just did a conference in Africa, and look at that. We had 62,000 views in Africa. We were trending across Africa throughout the 2 days. We reached 32 million people. So everyone is going online in different ways. They came, and you got to do it in different ways. Facebook is big in Africa. Twitter is bigger in other places. You've got to communicate, and we communicate in their language. So we have 28 media ambassadors around the world tweeting and social and Instagram, and they're doing it in local languages. We're not going out in English anymore. We need to talk to people in the language they're comfortable with, their first languages. Go ahead. So what about the 2 billion people that aren't online, or 3 billion? And they will be, but there's always going to be some. It's the last mile. So we are moving GLFX to the local level. We're giving out we're going to have chapters at the local level where they are communication hubs, knowledge hubs around the world. We hope to have 500 of these operating, and they're led by communities, and they're communicating the same way we do. And if any of you are interested in starting a GLFX chapter, contact us. These are people doing great things all around the world. Go ahead. And that is the last mile. So with the GLFX chapter, imagine we've got a group in Nairobi. They meet once a month. Then people that can't go on the internet can go to that knowledge hub. And our charter members go, FAO, World Bank, others. We have experts on almost anything. With 5,000, 7,000 organizations, we've got experts on almost any topic you can think of, from Kalimantan to the Peruvian mountains, to the Andes. And they come to those meetings, and people can go into those meetings, and they do. They travel. In Nairobi, they travel from halfway across the country to come to these meetings. That's the last mile. We can communicate. Digital's the base. This is the future. It's very, very exciting time, and very, very exciting time to be in forestry, because forestry is part. I'll talk about that later. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. These are breathtaking numbers and development. And as we can see, there's a lot of change in our operating environment, and it's all about both joining forces and then acting and tailoring the operations locally, as you have done. Very impressive. Can you distill in your two reasons from all that you presented and all that you've heard from the previous speakers into why one should and could choose a career in forestry?
I think, first of all, it's just the demand for foresters right now is expanding. A decade on ecosystem restoration, the trillion tree planting, and any forester will tell you that a trillion tree planting is going to go wrong if they don't plant the right tree in the right place, in the right times, in the right conditions. We need foresters, and we need foresters, and it's an exciting time because now foresters are no longer a little sector over on the side. Mm-hmm. The CGIAR, they used to call us tree huggers at C4. Not anymore. We're part of the landscape. We're part of the picture. We're all the SDGs, not just 15. It's a great time to be in. And it's a great opportunity for women to join forestry as well. So please do. Big time, more exciting, new technology, as Kerry said, great cool stuff on satellite imagery and technology. And we're not no longer just the guys with the, when I went to school, when I went to forestry with our great big, you know, and I wasn't even very good at it, sawing, the great big saws we used to use. Days have changed a lot now. It's a very exciting time to be in forestry. And you can always be a forester communicator. Great business, great opportunity, great jobs, lots of them.
Thank you, John. Very, very inspiring and inspiring. I agree. It's very nice that we've first that the gender development is going into a good direction, and then that the polarizations and the name calling and that is that we're finding common ground and being part of solutions in a joint way. I would now like to allow Dr. Magda to give her two answers. The reasons again, apparently there was some technical problem. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, guys. So yeah, as John just said, so there is a place for many different jobs to be applied and implemented in forestry sector, and in our case, it would be the place to practice research on natural science. So this is where we can really apply our research. And the second one is to contribute to the sustainable management of forest through research. So this is where we will apply what we already know about it. So these are my two points.
Excellent, Dr. Magda. Thank you very much for sharing. I've now heard that we have difficulties in getting Tatenda to the session. I'm sorry to say that we're going to have to miss her part today. But after these very inspiring introductory statements by all the speakers, we will now move on and to the Q&A session. We have some questions to each of the speakers, and I'm going to ask the speakers a question, and then if anyone from the panel wants to intervene to that, they're welcome. And at the same time, we all encourage the audience to share their responses on Slido. And my first question now goes to Kerry. And he said, what elements of forestry careers should make them attractive to young people today?
I think in South Africa, we've got, I don't think it's unique in the world, but certainly in our country, the problem is that a lot of these kids that are going into forestry are going into forestry by default. So they are given an opportunity to apply to universities or to study forestry, and it's like the fourth on their list, and they don't get into the other three courses, and the fourth course just happens to be forestry. So there's no real passion for it. They don't know much about it until they actually get into it. So I think the other thing is that you're getting a lot of kids from rural areas going into forestry. And like I said, in Mondi, we are very big on looking at our footprint in the communities and trying to get foresters or future foresters to come into the forest industry because they live near forestry. So they can go back and be role models to their communities. Also, the employability is a big issue. South Africa, unemployment is like 40% plus. So for these kids to get a qualification and get work, and that's one of the reasons why we built this pipeline process, so that kids that come in, we look after them from the very start, right the way through their careers and develop them while they're in there. So I think employability, big issue. I think that's the main thing that affects the youth in South Africa and going into forestry. So I think employability and attracting and giving them more information on how exciting forestry can be and how high tech it is. And it's cool. All these instruments that they use are wonderful and exciting things that they're going to learn about.
Cool. That rings a bell. Thank you, Kerry. Would any of the panelists now want to intervene as to what Kerry said?
I could add to that.
Yes, John.
Why it should be attractive? Because there is just so much going on in forestry. First of all, let's look at two big numbers. One is 10 million hectares as of 2020 from the Forest Assessment Report, 10 million hectares disappearing, deforesting. On the other hand side of that, 5 million hectares replanting. So there's opportunities for foresters on both sides. How do we use more scarce resources, and how do we restore degraded lands? And how do we deal with that side of it, the deforestation? And how do we get more out of wood, even more and more and more? And on the other side, how do we plant all around the world on the right places, in the right seeds, in the germplasm? There's so much cool stuff there. But then you look at all the neat things they're doing now. Look at climate change. I said before, we're on the forefront. Our friends at the ITTO, they're working very, very hard now on timber and trying to make that timber last and checking the emissions as it goes through the cycle right to the house and how long it lasts. We weren't doing that in 1982 in forestry. Lots of cool stuff. Our friends here, FSC, are about to build a wooden house, a wooden office for all the people in Bonn to come and develop. So there's architecture with wood and all kinds of neat things happening there, also involving emissions and carbon. And then you've also got bamboo. Look at all the cool stuff. I've got socks on. They're bamboo. Bamboo is a great forestry business. And then you got agroforestry in every supply chain. Everyone's trying to build sustainable supply chains. It's just such a great opportunity now for foresters. Not enough of us. And you can go in a lot of different directions.
Exactly. Thanks, John. I meant to say the same, that so many directions. As you can see from the Slido as well, there are both wildlife and reconnecting with nature, but then a very important aspect is being part of the conversation and communicating and work with people and for the people, and the diversity in careers is very rich. If anyone else from the panel would like to intervene, they're welcome. If not, I will take a question from the audience. Okay, no intervention at this point. Patricia Sphere, you had a question. Can we?
D'accord. Alors, vous nommez votre bagage et vous quittez d'ici.
Yeah.
Je peux... Oui, oui. I wanted to ask a question for... Yes, I wanted to ask a question for Dr. Magda. In your opinion, Dr. Magda, since you're working with students, you teach at university, and you have also, you're applying the research with an NGO. Why, in your opinion, students are not attracted to forestry sector?
It's, I think, because we are suffering from the stereotype things. As John said, we imagine that foresters are people with jacket écossais, with something very primitive, very basic to work, while this is why I emphasized about the technology in the forest. And this is what I use today with my students by showing them, we didn't know that it could be done. This is the first point, to show them that technology can be applied in forest and it's needed in the forest sector. And the second point is about the diversity of skills. The work in forest is very inclusive, because as we see today in schools, for example, everybody is assessed on its basic, the same, we have the same exam for everybody, while we know very well that every student has different skills. And I show them that in forestry, this is where we can apply all these skills and where everyone has its chance, has its opportunity, as we can see on the slides. This is the second point. And the third one is something about place. So everyone, either if Lebanon is a very small country, but we have a high diversity of ecosystem and forest, and everyone has his own forest with its diversity, and we need his voice because he knows what's in his forest. So it's a local, and by exchanging experience with other foresters in Lebanon and outside, we can make what we have visible and compare. So they can have also these two dimensions about local and global knowledge to be shared. So it's a very enriching place to be and to work.
Excellent. Thank you, Patricia, for that question as well. And I'd like to go even deeper to Dr. Magda now.
Please call me Magda.
Yes, Magda, yes. What communication argument would you think is needed to engage the young people? We were touching upon that and a bit, and how far should these arguments be tailored to regional and local contexts?
There's no limit. We should have these people. We should involve them. In fact, we begin very early at school, but we don't miss any opportunity to have these people on board. And it's not very difficult because we are not taking them in a very complex place. We are just going out in the forest, outdoor. And by using very intuitive reaction, we don't have to work very hard to tackle their, not tackle, to take out their curiosity. You know, just by pointing them something they will discover, and to discover it, that means that if you want to need what's in it, how it functions, you have to do some science. And this is where they see the importance of science and in understanding what's happening in nature. And by doing this, we will put this link automatically on track. And these people are, even if they will not do science, but they keep as a part-time job or part-time interest in forestry job. And so, yeah, everything is just to have these people go to the forest and trigger their curiosity and show them that you have the tools today to see and to understand what's happening in the forest.
Excellent. Very compelling. Thanks, Magda. I think we have a pleasant surprise. We have retrieved Tatenda, and we will now go back to completing the statement round by her. And I'll just tell a few words about Dr. Tatenda Mapeto. Is a forestry academic in the natural resources science, in case you don't remember, and management cluster at the Nelson Mandela University in South Africa. And her expertise lies in forest inventory, planning, and forest resource management, especially on the socio-economic and environmental aspects of sustainable forest management. And she will hopefully talk about the importance of greater representation of women in forestry and how it can contribute to attracting young women into the sector. Over to you, Tatenda.
Good morning, everyone. I really have connectivity issues this morning. Can I confirm that you can hear me before I go ahead?
Loud and clear.
I do apologize for the connection issues as it would come with these online sessions. But I'm going to speak a bit about how representation matters in terms of attracting young women into the forest sector. And I'm going to start by saying, yes, the forestry industry does have that legacy of being a male-dominated field, and generally one that is historically marginalized the participation of women. But this does not mean that women were not active in forestry. It just speaks to the visibility of women in forestry. So I grew up in a region where women are the pillars of forestry activities through activities such as gathering food, fuel, ensuring that they protect the young trees and the saplings, harvesting medicinal products, and teaching the younger generation on the importance of forest. However, that just means that women have been custodians of the importance and the knowledge around forest. All these are indicators that women are crucial, but the image that we tend to depict or how we tend to present forestry is one that links back to it's one that links back to the extractive components of the industry. So just the physically demanding jobs, such as timber felling, the jobs such as how we go into the forest and we do the harvesting. But now the whole world is turning to actually start to acknowledge that there is a diversity in the forest sector, both from even the physically demanding jobs as we now modernize and are able to use machinery, but also to look at how do we tell a representative story to show that forestry, like many other sectors, has now become accessible to women. So representation matters to attract young women, because that is where we get our role models. That is where we get the ability to have mentorship, and in a way for young women to see that they are visible peers in the sector that will allow them to have confidence and to have some form of evidence-based access to these opportunities that we have in the industry. And if we can just have some few points on how we can promote then the representation of attracting young women into the sector, I would want to start by saying, obviously using media, we cannot even question that or doubt that, especially social media, to show how opportunities within the sector fits with the career goals of young women. So a general trend is that, especially for the young, they would like to do jobs that are beneficial, that have got some sense of purpose. We see that more and more. And forestry is a long-term industry. It is the one industry where what you do will probably not be directly beneficial to you. It is the only industry, I would say, in the world. And that links to young people to say they want jobs like that, where they are in a way being benevolent, where they are giving. So social media to show that this is what forestry is, and that the careers that you can have are not only linked to cutting down a tree with a chainsaw, but you've got a lot of information technology careers, you've got a lot of management type of careers, you've got a lot of social coordination type of careers that fits well with the flexibility and accommodation that women of a young age are often looking for. Obviously, the outdoor nature of some of the components of first career actually brings flexibility. And if there's one thing that young women are always, it's flexibility, to be able to be all these other identities that they have beyond the job. Then the second point is tell the stories of women who are successful in the sector. It is inspiring and empowering to see women in higher positions in an industry, and yet we don't get to see those images. So just telling the stories of successful women. I know IUFRO currently is building a book on young foresters in the African continent, but that is also already, if you look at who is being represented, it's often the young male foresters or the young male forestry professionals. So why don't we dedicate to telling the stories of successful women in the sector as a way to show that there is a place for women? And then developing intentional mentorship programs. And lastly, also ensuring that when we do the marketing, the publishing, we show the full value chain of forestry. So not only the extractive components, but all the other human dimensions, the technology dimensions, the informatics dimensions. And lastly, how do we, when we put it into magazines and pamphlets, when we have a female or a woman figure in our advertising, we need to also bring equality into the showcasing. So there was one forestry magazine where they were advertising a huge new forestry piece of equipment. And the male who was advertising it was wearing the full protective gear. And the woman who was also on there was wearing a swimsuit. So that already, according to a young woman, says, well, so I just need to look good. It does not show the actual parts of the career. And we need to also start thinking about structural amenities in field work, sizes for protective clothing. Often you have to shop on the male section, and to still work at issues that often the world wants to say we've passed on, such as sexual harassment, violence, having these changes communicated to women so that we can deem the sector as welcoming to them. So these were my introductory remarks. And again, I really apologize for the connection issues that I had this morning.
No worries. We're really happy. That was very inspiring, and shows how many questions and challenges we still have in the sector. From what you said, could you distill from your part 2 or 3 main reasons why one should and could work in forestry?
Well, I would say that the first reason of working in forestry is that at the moment it is the world has started to put nature at the center of all the other socio-economic systems. And forestry is a natural resource management industry. So you are guaranteed to be part of an industry that is growing, projected to be growing at least 5%, which is much higher than a lot of the other industries, at least for the next 10 years. So it is a vibrant industry. The second thing is that there are many areas of forestry that you can choose to specialize in, but at the same time, you will always be that person who can connect the people. I always say, the young women or students say to me, well, if someone in ecology can get a job in the industry and someone is doing GIS technician can get a job in the industry, what is my role then as a young person who's getting into this industry? And I always say your role is to be the connector, to be the person who puts the dots on this holistic value chain. And that is a job that gives you some sense of purpose and some sense of a meaningfulness in what you're doing. And then the last thing is there is so much growth also on the technological side and the digitalization of the systems that we use in forestry industries. And again, that speaks to what the screen generation are used to, or what the young people really want to be a part of. So those would be my 3 reasons for getting into forestry.
Thank you very much. And now that we have you here, we were already in the same section of next section of Q&A. And since I have you here, I'm going to ask you the next question as to, after what you said, what can greater representation of women in forestry contribute to attracting young women into the sector?
Representation matters. If you can see your visibility in a sector as a young woman, you can easily map the path that you can take if you get to be a participant or if you get to work in that particular industry. So the first thing that when someone is looking for a career to get into is what would I be doing and how would I be doing it, and what would be my contribution to society. And what we find often with forestry careers is the people that get in are not people looking for huge amounts of salaries, but is that the sense of purpose. So representation allows them to see the possibilities. It allows them to see that there are opportunities, and it allows them to be able to relate to them being in that particular position. If I'm not represented in any way, it takes a long time before I can see myself doing it as well. So visibility matters, representation matters.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Do any of the panelists have an intervention on this? And I can see that the audience is busy in Slido as was meant. So can I have an intervention from the panelists? No, doesn't seem to be the case. I think, yes. There is a variety of replies in the Slido as well. And yeah, sure, the physical strength is not the main skill to have. And I think it's a question of technique and brains, and not physical strength of the whole the whole profession and the varieties that it entails. We will now then move to the next question to Apsana. In your opinion, what prevents young people from choosing forestry as a career? We've heard a lot on the discussion now, but how would you filter and coin the main reasons?
Yes, most of the questions, I mean, like most of the things are already discussed about this by the previous panelists as well. But talking about the general context and in terms of the young people, I think the first thing that prohibits them is how forestry is really portrayed, you know, like initially I used to think that it was in context of developing country like my country, Nepal, but now I realize that it's no entire the world perceives that for like even in context of developed countries, forestry is perceived as really a hard and tough field, you know, like that's very rough, where one need to get exposed, where one need to come out of the comfort zone. And particularly for young people in my country context, it's like already mentioned that it's really male dominated, so women should go for a, you know, like safer career, or maybe somebody that's from the city who has not been exposed to outdoor, it's not a career for them, maybe they should like go for something desk work or something like that. So this also makes me link with the multiple dimensional scope of forestry, so that is not, you know, outreached well in terms of general audience, I would say. So because there are often examples and often instances where, you know, when I am working in different forestries, for example, I tell that I want to be a communicator and people come to me and tell me, oh, through forestry you can do that as well. I thought you just like work, go in the field, just practice one thing. So that multiple hats that a forester has to wear is not communicated well upon the general audience, and that is the first thing that prohibits young people, because they think if second thing is like it's also said that one needs to be very adaptable, and then, you know, like very, like if somebody outspoken to really survive in the field. So those sort of messages are not well portrayed, I would say. And the next thing that I would want to definitely tell in this platform, that in terms of developing countries, the forestry departments that are under the universities, you know, like they are not as attractive to young people as the other departments are really are. I don't know, it's because the forestry department are getting less investments, or if they are not well, you know, like exposed to international platforms. So that is also prohibiting young people from really coming into a career like forestry. So I think that's my opinion.
Well said, Apsana. And already in the Slido, it says it looks like there's a standing order for more communication. There's a lack of knowledge and a lack of awareness of what all the dimension of careers in forestry might be, and it is a problem that we have. That's why we're here, and looking forward to collecting your thoughts on that and processing it further. Does anyone had an immediate intervention to what Apsana said from the panel?
I just wanted to add, I think the point on forestry departments not being attractive to young people, I think it also comes back to the point of representation and what the type of staff, of the staff profile that you have in this in these forestry departments. So that is another thing that needs to that needs to be highlighted in terms of communicating, so that we make forestry a career that students want to get into, or the young people want to get into, just to add to that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. And I think Patricia Swear, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yes, concerning communication, after all, okay, we know that students are not so attracted to forestry, but from the experience of all the speakers, the guest speakers we had today, what would be, in their opinion, this message that would attract these students, that would make them click on the registration button and start their I would say their studies in forestry sector or forest related fields. I think we need to reach a point where what would be so attractive to them, because everybody I think agrees that there should be an attracting message in a way. In your opinion, every one of you, what would be this attractive message that would make the difference for them?
Thank you, Patricia. Can you over to you, panelists, and please give your concise and to the point answers.
For me, it's opportunity, making it attractive so they know what's available and seeing it as an opportunity for a career, and also to get a qualification and to make a difference. So it's working with a whole lot of nice, cool stuff, but it's also, especially in South Africa, to me, it's about opportunity for employment and building a career, making a difference.
Thanks, Kerry. Others?
Yes. We run every year presentation in schools in order, as private university, we have to ensure the pipeline of students. So we go and promote different curriculums that we have at university. And this is where when we go to lower ages, so excuse my English, I don't have always the appropriate terms, but when we go to kids until 13 years, they will talk to you about their dream work, okay? And this is where you can find work like for forest, for wildlife, etc. And when you go closer to 17, 18, and when they really have to choose a job, they will go more for something more secured, more, we will get a job when we finish. So this is where we have to link to work, that to mean that it's not just about a beautiful place to work and just enjoy wildlife. We have to show them that they can do both. They can have this positive part, but they can also earn money and have a nice life by having the minimum, and they can make a real career in this domain. And this is not something that we can tell them when they have to register. This is something where all the communications that came around, we have to show them some role models that succeeded to make a business out of their work in forestry. They have, so it's a long-term process that will lead to them to sign and register. It's not just at this point where they have to choose. I don't know if I made myself clear.
Thank you very much. Any others? Or
I would want to add a point.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the very important thing that I personally feel is just like she mentioned earlier, that there should be a lot of discussions about, superheroes or role models that are really contributing in the forestry sector or towards climate change. So that's really less discussed as per my experience. Like when we are talking about taking inspiration, or as a child, when you are thinking about whom do you want to be or what do you want to be like in the future, there are mostly very less examples that are given about forestry since the beginning of one's like childhood. So I think that kind of discussions is also very needed. And next thing is, I think there should be a separate discussion or outreach where forestry, how is it different from other field, like how is it different from agriculture, how is it different from environment science, so that, because if you talk about developing country perspective, it's really not segregated and people often perceive it as a one single career. So I think that segregation is also needed in discussions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the superhero aspect, which is not often enough repeated. And I see from the comments that John has a similar train of thought, saying choose forestry and change the world, and no less. And with that, I would like to now turn to John on a question after this very vivid and versatile discussion, that how can we use strategic communications to change people's perception of forestry?
Well, I think it's two things. One is you have to communicate people in the language that they want to be communicated to, in the place that they're being communicated to. If they use Facebook, use Facebook. If they're speaking in Bahasa, speak Bahasa. We got to get away from this whole Northern perception of we're going to speak English and do this and that and that and that and that. So we got to talk to them in the language that they want to, that they communicate in, and not us. We have to use local communicators to communicate with them because they understand those markets. The second is it's that inspiration word. It's exactly, I think Tatenda and Apsana both said the same thing, and I'm agreeing. You got to tell people I can't think of anything in forestry where you're not changing the world. Nothing. There's nothing we can do. You're having a positive impact. So we got to get inspiration and hope into this, not deforestation and scarred hillsides. We all know about that. We've all seen it. We've all cried over it, but that's not going to change the world. To change the world is that there's a chance, there's a solution. The young people feel it, the communities feel it, we can. And so it's hope, 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 and inspiration, and be part of the solution. That's what you can do when you join forestry. A really exciting opportunity and badly needed.
Excellent. Thank you, John. There's a Tatenda would like to add a few points. Go ahead, Tatenda.
Thank you. I just wanted to support the other panelists. I think it was Apsana and Kerry as well, to say often it's about what is the opportunity, and the hook could be the employment opportunity, which is what we see in South Africa. But at the moment, or currently, we have a huge momentum in terms of climate change related jobs, restoration economy, green jobs, circular economy. It is the whole world is looking at natural resource industries to provide the growth for any type of economy. It has to be based in that sustainable in that sustainable type of thinking. So when we present these opportunities to the world, we then connect, as John is also saying, the hope lies in you being part of a job where you can make a difference for society, make a difference for the planet. And young people want to make a difference. They actually want to be part of important, if I might say to it that way. And if their job allows them to be that difference, then we have a good mix in terms of how do we present or how do we communicate these opportunities or the perceptions of the forestry industry to the young people. That's
Excellent.
it from me.
Thank you, Tatenda. I see in the slide a very promising thing, showcasing stories of hope, and not on the negative, but the solutions. It's a very good point John made on not just go from a northern perspective and go for tailored and more like a locally tailored communication approach. And I advise all of you to make contact with Maria de Cristofaro from FAO, who is the coordinator of the Forest Communicators networks on 5 regions, and we'd be more than happy to have people join in those networks if you can contact her. And now we're going to start wrapping up a little. The speakers have shared about 10 or more reasons why one should consider a career in forestry. And now soon we will show them to you. And we would like to ask you, audience, kind of a ranking on many of the reasons are important. All of the reasons are important, but to rank them on Slido. And to do so, you may click on the link again in the chat or scan the QR code on the screen. And now, as you can see on the screen, the 10 reasons, you may click on them starting from the one you think is most important to the least important. And once you're finished, do not forget to hit the send button to ensure that your answers are considered. Go ahead. we've had such a broad spectrum of reasons already, and I'm very happy for the activeness of all of you, and we'll see how these 10 reasons pan out in your hands. I see that Magda had, was this a previous message that Magda had wanted to add 2 points still, or?
No, I already did it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, sorry,
Thank you.
my lagging technology. Yes, as said, we will all your reflections will be taken forward when the final reports are being put together, and they are being considered there. And let's see, it looks good. There is a creating more resilient environments and climate change solutions, very current, big picture solutions, work with them for nature and the SFM, and yes, work together with communities, and then green economy and sustainable use of nature-based products, which are solutions in themselves as well. High impact is there, and research natural sciences and high tech machinery and the tools in the forest and in the industry in a broad sense. Cool. Yes, thank you very much for your interventions, and we'll make sure that they will be registered. I think now it remains me to close the session, and we have discussed extensively about the many reasons why forestry careers could and should be exciting. And actually, we gathered 10 reasons, but there could be at least 100, if not more, reasons, as you've already shown in your very active discussions. And we'd like to close this session by showing you a short video that depicts in the many options and paths provided by this sector. Is just an inspiring a kid's aspiration on working for forestry, and it coins what a versatility the forest jobs have and can include. Can we see the video, please?
Monitoring system.
Yep, I would like to be a forester. That already showed in a very short period many of the dimensions that you could have a career in forestry with. And now it remains me to thank all you panelists and speakers for outstanding performances and very inspiring interventions, and we're really happy that you took time to be a part of this session, and thank all of you participants as well. You've been very active and shown that you put your heart and soul into the solutions, and how we can go forward with communicating the solutions, and then of course the technical staff, without whom this would not have been a successful session, both Greta Castelli and Teresa Löffler, and many of the people I don't even know how to name and who made this session possible. And I wish you an excellent day, and thank you very much for your contributions. It was very rich, and I was very happy to be a part of it. Thank you